I'll go over a little bit about myself. So, like I said, my name is Connor. I've been with Rustic Pathways since about 2009. So, I have worked for us in programs in India, China, Thailand, Australia, Peru, or not Peru, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and the United States. And I've run our community service, adventure, language immersion program. So I've done quite a bit of mixture of all of it. And I'll let Jessie talk a little bit about herself.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. As Connor mentioned, my name is Jessie Wachter. I'm currently a global programs advisor. And I was formerly our Tanzania country director. I have run programs in New Orleans, Peru, India, Tanzania, Mongolia, and Fiji. So I can speak to any of those programs as well as most of our other global programs. So happy to have you join us and look forward to this presentation. So for those of you who are still looking into Rustic Pathways, looks like we have quite a few people who are still trying to decide which program is the best fit. Rustic is currently operating in 18 countries, and we have almost 100 programs on offer, so it can be a little bit overwhelming trying to choose the best fit for your student. Here's a little glance at where we operate currently. We are all around the world, strong showing in Asia, South Pacific. We do have several countries in Africa, as well as Latin America, and domestic programs in the US. And our mission statement is very important to us at Rustic Pathways. We do strive to empower students through innovative and responsible travel experiences to positively impact the lives and communities around the world. So that means both the students that travel with us, our staff that are running the programs in the countries, as well as those who travel to run the countries with your students, and then of course the communities in which we're operating. And we've told you a little bit about who we are presenting this tonight, but we'd like to talk to you a little bit more about who Rustic Pathways is.
Ultimately, at Rustic Pathways, we pride ourselves on sort of a diverse leadership team. And this means people both in the office and then obviously on the ground running these programs for our students. So a good thing to keep in mind while you're running trip is that we've got a ton of people out in the field with your students and children throughout the trip. And then we also have a ton of people in our office that are going to be helping with questions from the US side of things. Ultimately, on the ground, we pride ourselves in sort of having a mixture of both local and non-local staffs on all of our programs. So our local staff members are people from the community, often either from just the country or the village that we're working in, that really give us that knowledge and expertise of what's happening on the ground in these areas 365 days out of the year. It's another really cool thing about Rustic Pathways is that we're not sort of a helicopter organization where we'll come in, a week before the programs and just quick set up all the logistics. We really pride ourselves in making sort of a long-term commitment to all of these communities that we are running programs in so that we can sort of develop that relationship throughout the year beyond just the couple months that we may run summer programs. Additionally, sort of the non-local staff members that we hire, those are people that have expertise in the very specific fields that the program will run in. So Jessie will talk about this in a little bit, but we have some community service programs, some adventure programs, some photography or language immersion programs. So our non-local staff members may be someone who has a degree in biology for an animal conservation program. Or they could be a photojournalist coming to run a photo program for us. They may just have a lot of experience in sort of community service, volunteering throughout their time, sort of in just their background. Or they just may have some more medical advanced certifications on the programs. Ultimately, we look for a lot of different qualities in trip leaders. And typically we get a lot of questions as well about what's the average age of trip leaders, that kind of stuff. Our minimum age for trip leaders is at least 22 years old, although our average age is about 25, 26 years old, typically just because they have a little bit more experience, either working with high school students or traveling in sort of these contexts that we're working in. So they usually just become the most competitive people that get jobs during the summer. And then, of course, we have a lot of full-time staff members that will also be trip leaders and program leaders on these trips themselves. Moving on, I think another really important thing to highlight is sort of our local partners and the partnerships that we create on the ground. And I mentioned this previously, but Rustic Pathways is in these locations 365 days a year, working with these communities, villages, or local nonprofits and NGOs throughout the year. Sometimes those local partnerships are based in, perhaps a small school where we've just developed a relationship with that village, and we work with village leaders about repairing the school. Sometimes it could be an entire nonprofit type organization that is run, owned, and operated by Rustic Pathways itself. So the example I try and give with that one is we have one program called the Rustic Pathways Children's Home, which was created by the original founder of Rustic Pathways just to sort of fulfill the need of a lot of people living on the Thai-Burmese border without access to school or education. So he created our own nonprofit, the Rustic Pathways Children's Home, that runs 365 days a year. It's our project, and we just sort of pipe students into it for the couple months that we run programs during the summer. And some of the partners that we create are with people in the community for long term and are nonprofits that you may have heard of. So Save the Rain does a lot with creating water availability to people in small villages. With our animal conservation projects, we'll usually partner with a different nonprofit who's there 365 days a year. So the level of partnership varies program to program, but that's the cool part of Rustic Pathways, being able to sort of create these partnerships long term. And then the last component of Rustic Pathways that I think is the important thing to highlight is the passionate students, the excitement and interest that we get from either you if you're a student or your children if you are a parent of a student that you're looking at starting a program with right now. Ultimately, a lot of parents and families wonder which program is right for me. And what I always say is in Rustic Pathways, there's no good or bad program. We've designed them to sort of be available for students in a variety of passions. We want to make sure that the students participating in our programs are 100% excited about the project, about the communities that they're traveling in. And that really adds a lot of flavor, excitement on our programs, because everyone signing up for these programs has so many different choices that they really narrow it down to what they're passionate about. And that's reflected in all of the groups and the setup of all of our projects. I'm sort of going to turn it over to Jessie right now, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the types of programs that we run and the types of programs that you'll see in Rustic Pathways.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. So at Rustic Pathways, we really do try to have something for everyone. And although our focus is community service efforts around the world, about 80% of our programs do have some sort of community service element to them. We also have programs for students looking for photography emphasis or for medical certification. We have language immersion programs, and we do have adventure programs as well. And something that Rustic Pathways does that's different from some other companies is that we offer shorter itineraries that are specifically designed to interconnect so that students have a lot of control in developing their own itinerary. We don't offer 4 to 6 week long itineraries where students are kind of locked into specific activities. Instead, we have 1 and 2 week and some 3 week itineraries that students can mix and match and combine together that fits both their schedules, and students are very busy during the summer, and also their interests. If they want to do a week of community service with kids and then a week of community service with animals, for example, and then maybe do a week of sailing in the Caribbean or scuba diving or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, they can do that and hopefully combine things in a way that fit both their interests and their schedule. Gives them a lot of flexibility and ownership over their summer experience. As I mentioned, we have different types of programs, and community service is our focus. We do try to have a variety of different types of service opportunities, something hopefully for everyone. Different types of community service programs that we offer. We have animal conservation. We have environmental conservation programs. An example of that is we do some infrastructure development and water irrigation projects, as well as working with a number of different animals. I know Connor can speak to this very, very in depth. He's our company's panda lover extraordinaire. And we work with dolphins and turtles, and we go on safari, and they can work at the Brisbane, Australia Zoo, which is an incredible program if they're really interested in veterinary or zoo, the zoo profession, being a zookeeper. So a lot of different opportunities there. We also have community service opportunities for students looking to work with kids. It's another really popular opportunity. And obviously, there are kids around the world that are excited to meet our students that are learning different types of subjects, such as teaching English or teaching arts and crafts or doing leadership activities with the local kids. So a lot of different opportunities there, as well as infrastructure and community development projects. We offer education classes. So this is education for our students. As I mentioned, there are language immersion classes in both Chinese and Spanish. We have language immersion in Costa Rica for Spanish, and then obviously Chinese in China. We have photography programs for both new photographers, amateur photographers, as well as students who are really looking to build a portfolio. And our photography programs are led by professional photographers that worked for various organizations such as National Geographic, and they've published in Time magazine. And it's a really awesome opportunity for students to visit some of the most exotic places in the world under the tutorship of incredible photographers. And we also have medical certification programs. We offer wilderness first aid and wilderness first responder certification for students that are looking to get into the medical field, both in Thailand and in the Dominican Republic. And of course, we've got our adventure programs. So a lot of students are looking for some type of adventure during their summer, and we have got everything. We've got programs for students that they enjoy playing soccer with locals, and we've got soccer and service programs where they can give back to local communities and play soccer. We've got surfing programs, as you see here. We've got bungee jumping. We've got climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. As you'll notice, I was the director of our Tanzania program, so I do tend to go back to safari and Kili quite often. But we've got programs around the world, and as I said, something hopefully for everybody.
And then I want to talk just a little bit about our featured programs. So at Rustic Pathways, the biggest question that we always get is, you have so many trips, which one is right for me? I kind of mentioned this a little bit before. There is no good or bad program. It's all based on your, what you're passionate about, what you're excited about. If you're on our website sort of just exploring, anytime you're on our website and sort of just click the programs button, that'll be our featured programs and just some of the highlights of Rustic Pathways trips that we are looking to promote a little bit, just because of the diversity of the programs on that page. Plus, you can always reach out to us to sort of highlight some differences. So as Jessie said, there's community service, there's education, there's adventure. Where do I start? It sort of gives you an opportunity to look at a snapshot of a wide variety of trips and then sort of narrow it down from there. And that is where I want to sort of talk about what Jessie and my role is at Rustic Pathways, which is being a global program advisor. So like I said, I've worked in 10 different countries with Rustic Pathways. Jessie, you've worked in how many?
6.
6 different countries with Rustic Pathways. So, there's a team of about 8 of us that have worked in all of the countries at Rustic Pathways. And our pure role in the organization is to help find a good program fit for you. So this is sort of the end of the presentation where we sort of just talk about the overview of finding a program. We're not going to go into specifics tonight just because there's so many programs. There's 100 trips to cover. But at the end of the presentation, you'll definitely have our contact details, and we'll reach back out to you about finding a good program fit for you. That's the biggest sort of thing in Rustic Pathways. Once you get signed up for a program, I can guarantee it's going to be an awesome experience for your student. It's just finding that right match. So between the team of 8 of us, we'll be able to work with you more one-on-one tomorrow morning or sort of as the week progresses, just to find that good program match fit for you, so that we can find something great for you or your student this summer. And this is the part of the presentation where we'll talk a little bit more about like the logistics side of things with Rustic Pathways. So this is going to be things about signing up for the programs, what happens after I sign up, how do payments or flights work, things of that nature. As I mentioned early on in the presentation, it's just Jessie and I tonight going through questions as quickly as we can. So definitely submit questions if we're going over some of these topics, sort of in that sidebar. And if we don't get to it throughout the general presentation, at the end during questions, we'll go through that whole list of questions to sort of answer some of the things that came up. So the first thing I want to talk about is sort of deadlines and availability. Actually, this upcoming Sunday, so April 12th, is a very big deadline for Rustic Pathways. It's our guaranteed flight deadline. And what that means is sort of after this Sunday, we release our group seats sort of back to the airline. And after that point, we can no longer sort of guarantee that there'll be availability on our group flights to the country that you want to fly to. So after next week's Sunday, it just becomes a little bit more logistically difficult to sign up for a program. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that we have to work with you on more of a one-on-one basis to see if there's flights or room to get you sort of on program. Additionally, after this Sunday, all of our country directors start booking internal flights, reconfirming lodgings or bookings, or community service supplies, all that kind of stuff. So after this Sunday, it just becomes more difficult both for you as a family and then for us sort of behind the scenes. So this Sunday is sort of that big deadline that we try and communicate out to families to try and get all of your questions answered before that period of time, just to make it both easier for you all and then us. Additionally, availability is sort of a really big thing that I want to highlight as well. At this point in the year, a lot of our programs are starting to fill up, sell out, and there's not space available on some of our programs. Every program is going to have a different level of students that were able to enroll in the program. So some students are going to max out at 10 students, and some programs are going to max out at 40 students. I know I was just looking at some numbers earlier today, and the Dominican Republic right now in the entire country, it's 90% full. So for the Dominican Republic, for example, it's really getting close to selling everything out throughout the entire summer. Some countries and some programs still definitely have a lot of availability left. But as soon as a program sells out, that's it. We're not able to get any more people on the program. So the earlier you can sort of make that decision and sign up, the better. If you're exploring our website a little bit, any single program that you go to is going to list the departure dates for that program. And it'll either show you if it's available, if it has limited availability, very limited availability, or is sold out. Anything that's sold out, we're not unfortunately able to get you enrolled in a program. Anything with very limited availability probably only has 1 or 2 spots. Limited probably means about 3 or 4 spots. And just available means probably 5 spots or more. Definitely use that as a tool to sort of look to see if the program that you're interested in is filling up. Is sort of the best way to get a snapshot of availability for the programs. Moving on a little bit, how do you sign up? Right here is just a snapshot of our homepage. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a yellow button that just says Enroll Now. That's going to be at the top of every single page on the Rustic Pathways website. When you click on that Enroll Now button, it's just going to take you to an application for you to fill out. It'll ask you some questions about your student, the parents or guardians, what program and date you're trying to sign up for. And it takes about 10 or 15 minutes to actually enroll in a program. And once you sign up, there'll be a $200 application fee for enrolling in a program. And once you click submit, you'll get an automatic email confirmation that says we've received your application. And it's about 1 to 2 days after that where you'll get communication back from your personal travel advisor, just confirming your spot and giving you more details about your program. That'll also have details like your invoice for your payment. It'll have information about flights or visas if you're going to a country where a visa is required. And so all of that information will come about 1 to 2 business days after you sign up online. And then I really want to highlight the personal travel advisor program that we have at Rustic Pathways. So what I just mentioned is about 1 to 2 days after you sign up, you'll get communication from your personal travel advisor or your PTA. This is the person that's going to be with you from the moment you sign up from our program through the time that the program runs. So they're going to help you with everything from flights and forms to payments and packing lists. So if you're trying to fill out some of the forms that we need to fill out and you have a question, you have the single point of contact that you know you can reach out to in our office that'll help you with the forms questions. If you have a question about when your payment is due or where to send the check, again, you can always reach out to the personal travel advisor. If you want to know, hey, should I be packing closed-toed shoes, or should I be packing, flip-flops, or, sunscreen or bug spray, things like that. Again, that same person that you can always reach out to in our office that's going to be able to help answer some of those questions for you. They're a great resource for sort of preparing everything you need to know. And we'll sort of walk you through step-by-step everything prior to departure. Next, we're going to sort of talk about some of the logistics of getting to and from countries. And I'll let Jessie talk a little bit about flights.
Yeah, so we actually just had a question about flights, and this is a very, very common question. So we do require students to fly on our group chaperone flights, and there's a couple reasons for this. It's definitely easier logistically to have the entire group together. We have had situations before where students have been traveling on their own before we got as large as we are now, and students' flights are canceled, delayed. There's various reasons that the flights don't follow their original flight schedule, and therefore they end up all over the board as far as times of arrivals in their destination, their country of destination. Sometimes we have tight schedules with programs hopping from their hub airport in country to their next destination on a local in country flight, and we need to have those students in country. Therefore, Rustic Pathways has control of these group chaperone flights. We have control of the tickets, and we can move that entire group if need be. If something happens that we can't foresee, there's another volcano in Iceland, for example, we can move that entire group to a new day, to a new flight, and get them to where they need to be. We also have had students rerouted, and they've landed in places where we do not have staff in order to make sure that they're safe, ensure their safety on these programs. We've had students rerouted to Japan or to Nicaragua, and they have to stay overnight. And parents are very stressed, obviously, as are we, that we can't get to these students, and we have to figure out what to do on the fly. And we just want to make sure that we can ensure the safety and the logistical ease of this trip for the students that are traveling, sometimes for the first time, clear across the world to join these trips. So students are required to fly on our group chaperone flights. There are two exceptions to booking through Rustic Pathways, and that is in Latin America for Costa Rica and Peru. Families can book their own ticket as long as they are still booked onto that group chaperone flight. So again, Connor mentioned that you will be working with one of our personal travel advisors. They will be able to provide you the exact flight numbers. You can book yourselves onto that flight. If you want to use your own miles, you can do that, but you'll be flying, your student will still be flying with that chaperone to make sure that they are there with the group and safe in our hands.
And then the other exception, I think Jessie said there's two. The other exception is if you are starting travel from outside of the United States. So if you are listening in tonight and you're from Turkey or Australia or England or France, if you are not beginning travel in the United States, you do not then have to take our group flight from the United States to whichever country you're flying to. Again, you'll work with your personal travel advisor about the arrival times into the country that you're flying to, but we'll work with you as well if you're an international student. And just a fun fact, about 80% of our students do come from within the United States, and then about 20% of our students do come from countries outside of the United States. I think last year we had about 40 countries.
Actually, last year, 62.
62.
We were up by about 26 countries last year.
So we had people from just a ton of places last year, which adds a really cool component to the programs. Obviously, it depends which individual date and program you're signing up for. But it's pretty common now to have people from all over the United States, and then one or two people from Europe, and then one or two people from Asia. It adds just a really cool element to our programs.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, for every country that we operate programs, there's going to be a hub airport or two, depending on where you're located and where you're interested in traveling. So find on our website, we do have all of the travel information, all of the flight costs and logistical information for you. We don't list the exact flight numbers on the website because those they can change. We want to make sure that you work with your PTA to find exactly the flight number for your session. But you will be able to see which airlines that we use and what the hub airport will be, whether it's LA or Newark or New York or Houston. It depends on the country in which you're flying to. We can work with you if you have I have a question here that's someone's interested in flying out of one hub airport and into another. It's going to depend on the airline, our contract with the airline. So once you're registered, you can work with your PTA to figure out whether that is possible.
And then I just want to clarify too, some people have questions of, we'll take India, for example. India's hub airport is Newark, New Jersey. So the entire group needs to meet in Newark, New Jersey to travel to Delhi, India for the start of their program. If you are coming from, say, Chicago, Los Angeles, Florida, Boston, whichever city you're coming from, you'll be responsible for booking your own domestic airfare or transportation to the hub airport of Newark, New Jersey. Again, we'll give you all of the details of when that flight leaves so you know when to arrive in Newark. Our recommendation is always going to be 4 hours before that international flight, just to make sure it accommodates for any kind of delay between that domestic connection so you can grab that group flight. And then at that airport in that hub city, we'll have a flight leader. So that'll be someone who sits at the gate, checks students in, make sure they're sort of arrived, they know how to get on the airplane, and then physically escorts them from that hub city to the country that you're flying to. They'll then make sure that they go through customs and immigrations when they land, that forms are filled out properly, that everyone gets their bag, that kind of stuff, until they sort of get them to their trip leaders in that country. So from the time they get to that port city, they'll be with a Rustic Pathways representative through the flight, through the entire duration of their program, and then back on the flight back to the hub city in the United States. Also at the airport will be an airport coordinator. They sit on the non-secure side of the airport, so the check-in area, and they'll work with any problems or issues. So if you're a student or would be canceled or delayed and miss the group flight, they'll be there in the ground in that hub city to sort of help with problems and situations that arise on that day. So that's a pretty good overview of flights. We'll sort of move on to another section. This is a really common question in Rustic Pathways, and it's just how do you treat safety? There's lots of things that we can talk about in terms of safety. One of the most common questions is how many staff members per students. Across the board, we have a very minimum of, for every 7 students, there will be at least 1 staff member. So if you would have, say, 16 people on a program, you're going to have at least 3 staff members. That's our bare minimum. All staff members have at the very minimum first aid and CPR certification, with many staff members having more advanced certifications. So our full-time staff members, all of them have things like wilderness first responder or wilderness first aid. And then in a lot more of the rugged or more rural programs, we'll make sure that we have people with more advanced certifications on those trips. A lot of times people ask me then as well, well, what happens if something happens on a program? If someone gets hurt or injured, what do you do? And the answer to that question is it really depends on the situation, the injury, the program that you're on, the location that you're in. What I want to communicate to parents as much as possible is, as a trip leader, my goal is to get you to the nearest medical facility to treat what needs to be treated. So if something happens where you scrape your knee, or you have a bit of a tummy ache or a headache, I, as the trip leader, may be the nearest medical facility or medical professional to help out with that issue. So I can clean up your scraped knee. I can give you maybe a Tylenol or an aspirin for your headache. I'm the closest area to treat that. And so that's where we want to go. If something more advanced would happen, so let's say you've had digestive issues, you haven't used the bathroom in 2 or 3 days, things are getting uncomfortable, maybe we'll take you to a local clinic, that's 5 minutes down the road, that deals with that very, very basic sort of medical need on a continual basis through with other community members in the village. If something more extreme would happen, so let's say you're on a surf program in Costa Rica and a wave comes and it knocks a surfboard into your head and you get a concussion. For a situation like that, maybe we'll take you to the capital city where there's an MRI machine where we can, sort of look at the concussion or sort of look at things that maybe a local clinic or that me, myself cannot do even within a more advanced certification. We have safety and risk management plans on all of our programs that go through an if this, then that protocol. So the first thing that we do is we look at all of our activities holistically. So we're going to look at we'll take the surf example again. We'll look at, say, surfing on the beach, and we'll say, okay, to reduce the risk, we're going to make sure that we have X number of staff members on the beach, X number of staff members in the water, monitoring what happens on the beach day or while the students are surfing. But then if something would happen where a student would knock their head, then this is what we're going to do. If someone would scrape themselves on a piece of coral, this is what we're going to do. All of our programs go through that rigorous sort of safety and risk management plan, and then we communicate with our staff members what will happen in those situations so that we're prepared when they occur. I always tell parents, and again, I've been with the organization for well over a half decade now, there is never a time that I'm going to be able to guarantee that nothing will happen on a program. As a responsible organization dedicated to the safety of our students, what we want to make sure is not to promise you that nothing will happen, but to reduce the risks of things happening on program and then preparing ourselves for what happens if and when they could occur. That's what a sort of a responsible travel organization does, and what we do with each and every program throughout Rustic Pathways. Another note that I want to sort of mention about safety is there is an enrollment into international SOS, emergency evacuation, on every single one of our programs for our students. So this would be something if there would be a natural disaster that would occur while on program, or something that would require, let's say you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro and you would need to be evacuated off the mountain. This is emergency evacuation that provides helicopter support or just support from a internationally recognized organization that does these types of evacuations from all countries around the globe that can get your student to safety in very extreme situations. So that's also something that's a part of all of our programs here at Rustic Pathways. Did I miss anything? Do you want to cover anything about safety, Jessie?
No, I think that was really clear. I do want to just make a note. We have a question here about, it's coming from a student, and she's would like to travel with a friend, but it doesn't look like there's going to be any friends that are able to travel with her. Emily, this is a really, really common question. We have a lot of students that are worried about traveling on their own. And I think the assumption is that everybody is coming with a friend. And in fact, it's quite the contrary. Most students are traveling on their own. We do have some friends that come together, some siblings, but for the most part, the vast majority of students are traveling on their own to these destinations. I'm constantly shocked when I'm running programs, the students that didn't know each other before the flight. You will be amazed at how quickly you'll make friends on the flight down and the first day or two. All of our staff are specifically trained to work on group dynamic and make sure that everyone's working together and getting to know one another, especially on these shorter programs. From day one, we're going to be running activities, and you're going to have 17 new best friends by the end of day 2, I guarantee you. So it's very common to travel on your own, and you will definitely be the majority.
Great. And we'll sort of move to the next part of our slides to, this is a little bit in conjunction, I guess, with safety a little bit. This is a very common question of what kind of shots do I need? What kind of immunizations or inoculations do I need before travel? And the blanket answer that I'm going to give folks right now is that the biggest recommendation we have at Rustic Pathways is just to work with your local doctor, your family doctor, a travel doctor, or to really check the Center for Disease Control or the U.S. Department of State sort of recommendations for travel within that country. We, as Rustic Pathways, will definitely be able to give you sort of a background of what exists in the country or what has been reported and what a lot of families do. But as non-medical professionals and without knowing your specific medical background, the only things that we can require for our students are the shots or immunizations that are required for entry into travel for that specific country. For the most part, we get a lot of questions about, should I get vaccination for yellow fever or malaria? And the answer that we'll, again, always say is the best thing to do is talk to your travel doctor or your family doctor about that immunization. Ultimately, I would say the most common thing that I see is it really depends with families. Some people, malaria does exist in the country, but happens at such a low frequency that the family will not want to either pay for the malaria medication, or there can be some adverse side effects to some of these shots or immunizations or families just won't want to take them. I can say from a personal level, I travel in a lot of areas that will have malaria that exists, but I personally just choose not to have the malaria medication a lot of times that I travel. So again, once you sign up for a program, or if you want to talk to like a global program advisor about the specific country that you're looking for, we can give you recommendations or point you in the direction of the Center of Disease Control or the U.S. Department of State sort of recommendations. But ultimately, shots and immunizations are always going to be family decisions about what is right for your individual student. And the next thing, I'll have Jessie talk a little bit about the packing list. So this is when you've signed up for a program, you know what trip you're looking for. What should I bring? What should I pack? What should I take with me? Where do I find this information?
Yep. And so this is another thing that you can find both on our website as well as contacting your PTAs. So every program page on the website is going to have an individual packing list. Specific to that program, it's going to let you know what you should carry on your carry-on on the plane and what you should bring in your checked baggage. And oftentimes it gives you the type of luggage that you should be bringing as well. Most situations, you're going to want to pack light, pack light, pack light. And that is difficult sometimes for first-time travelers. But I promise that you will find this very, very helpful as you turn into an experienced traveler. And as you get into country and you're having to not wheel your luggage, this beautiful, big, huge suitcase that you've got that rolls nicely through the airport may not roll so nicely through over a gravelly, rocky road up a hill to your accommodation. So depending on the type of program, oftentimes with these being sometimes more rustic accommodations, or at least over not beautifully paved roads, you're going to want to bring something that you can carry on your own, that you can manage. We can definitely give you lots and lots of packing tips. Like Connor's mentioned several times, we have a lot of experience between the two and the 8 of us, and anyone that you speak with at Rustic Pathways will be able to give you some advice on how to pack light and what are the most essential items to bring on your trip. And keep in mind, most of these things that you think that you have to have, if you leave it at home, you're either going to be happy that you left it at home, or if you really need to, you can replace it in country. Most of these places you go, you're going to be able to pick up the shampoo that you didn't bring, or an extra cardigan or hoodie that shows where you've been. You're going to want to buy that Fiji, I've been to Fiji t-shirt. So keep in mind that you can get anything in country and you want to bring as little as possible.
And I think one thing to note too, it is really important to check these packing lists out. So as Jessie mentioned, you're not overpacking, bringing stuff that is just completely unnecessary. But also certain countries will have sort of cultural expectations of what you wear. So both Jessie and I participated and run programs in India. Jessie actually leaves tomorrow for a program to India. And that's like a great example of a country where like we do not allow females on the program to wear sort of spaghetti strap shirts or shirts without sleeves. You can't really have shorts that come above the knee at all. Really, in a lot of countries, it becomes a cultural norm to not expose certain parts of your body or wear certain clothing items which may be okay in one country would not at all be okay in another country. And what you'll find is if you do pack some of those things and you go to, say, a country like India, or you're trying to go to a temple in Cambodia, we just will make you change. So you may have even packed and just incorrectly, and so now you have all of these sort of short shorts that you're not able to wear for a week or 2 weeks at a time. So definitely refer to that packing list before you come to make sure that you're packing things that are appropriate and usable on the program. This is also another huge question, so I'll sort of bring it up for everyone right now, and that's communication in country. When will I hear from my son or daughter? How often am I going to hear from Rustic Pathways?
Should I bring a phone or
should I bring a phone, my laptop?
tablet?
Am I going to hear from them every single day? And there's some general answers I'll give and some more specific answers that I will give to everyone. First of all, communication in country is going to vary per country and per program. Some programs you may have access to email several times throughout the week. You may have access to email or a computer, every single evening. And some programs you're not going to have access to internet, communication, electricity for maybe 2 weeks, the entire duration of the time you're in country. Also, some people sort of say, oh, that's okay. Like I talked to Verizon and they said Nope. I will have service in Tanzania. So I just have international plan, all good. What we find a lot of times, even with that, is Verizon is going to tell you that they may have coverage, but maybe it's just in the capital city and not the actual village or the actual community that you're in. So definitely one, talk to Rustic Pathways about your specific program. Ask how often you're going to be able to have access to either a phone or email communication back home, so that you have that information from us. And then students and parents, I cannot highlight this enough, have a conversation before the students leave about what the expected level of communication is based on what's available in country. I see it all the time where parents think that they're going to get a text or an email from their student every single day, but maybe they only have access to the internet once a week. So parents will freak out a little bit or be a little bit concerned when they don't have that communication every day. And vice versa. Some students will want to be, communicating back outwardly home quite frequently, but just don't have the ability or the option to do that. At Rustic Pathways, our biggest recommendation, what we would like to see, is people communicate as little as possible back home. And ultimately, that's because we want you to experience these things and these opportunities on the ground to the best of your ability. We want you to live in the moment. We want you to really absorb what's happening around you. And ultimately, what's happening around you is not what's happening back home. It's not the graduation party that you may have missed. It's not an Instagram message or a Snapchat that you really want to see. This is an opportunity to explore the world beyond just a 4-inch screen in front of you. So really have that conversation with your student, develop those expectations, and really ask yourself, like, how much should I be communicating back home? Often this is a learning experience for our students, but also parents, because you have sort of the ability to communicate with each other at home, every moment of every day. That may not be an option in country, but also does it need to be? Is it okay to sort of take a breath, take a moment and say, great, I want them to have this adventure, be able to explore and then communicate once a week, or, at the end of their program. So really be open and honest with your student about what you expect from them. And then think to yourself, like, what do I want as an ideal communication structure?
Yep. And keep in mind, we will automatically email every single parent when your student lands in country. So you will definitely know that your student is safe and sound in country and they've began their adventure. Don't think that once you set them off in the airport in Los Angeles, you won't hear from them until they land back in Los Angeles. You will hear from us to let you know that they have landed safely. And then again, as Connor mentioned, depending on the program and how remote the students are going to be, you may hear from us, and depending on the duration of the program as well. During a 2-week program, typically you will hear from us at least once during the trip. But again, it's really going to vary on how much access that the staff have while they're running the trip with your students. We also have, this is in regards to safety as well, we also have a 24-hour, 365-day emergency hotline that you can reach us at any given point. So if any time there's an emergency on your end, you can reach us. You're going to contact somebody in our office that is on call, and then we can patch you into the country if need be, and then eventually onto your student as well. So there's always that link there if something happens on your end. Obviously, if there's ever an issue where we need to take your student to a clinic or something happens in country, we will automatically immediately contact you as well. We do like to say no news is good news, and I know for anxious parents especially, your students obviously are very precious and you want them to be safe and having a good time. We do too, and as Connor said, we want you to be as disconnected to your digital devices as possible, but we also want to make sure that you are comfortable as parents sending your students abroad, so we make sure that you have every venue to reach us as possible. And just to make a quick note on bringing your phones, we understand that students are going to need their phones for arrival and departure days. So a lot of students will bring their phones. We don't necessarily require students to turn their phones in when they get to their country. That's going to depend on the program and where they are at. Sometimes they will do that just for safety reasons. They want to put it out of their possession so they don't lose it as they're traveling around. But most of the time, they're not going to have reception. And if they do, we'll have very specific times in which they're allowed to use their devices.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify with that as well, as Jesse said, very specific times. If you do bring a device and there is access, we don't allow students to use like cell phones during group activities. So community service projects or your whitewater rafting, you can't be Instagramming and in the raft, or meal times or group discussions. So it really is just about those times, sort of later in the evening or early in the morning, when there's like a little bit of free time before group activities. You can certainly bring, if you've got like an iPhone or whatever device you're using for your camera, that's great. We're more than happy that you want to take some photos throughout the program. What we just sort of want to avoid is people, taking a photo and then immediately Instagramming it or immediately emailing it or texting it people. You can definitely use it if that's your camera on the program. Although, again, we'll let you know when it's appropriate and not. As Jesse mentioned, I work a lot with our animal conservation projects. So for the Panda project, for example, we don't allow you to use phones or cameras the first couple days while working with the pandas. We want you to get used to the volunteer aspect of it and sort of the direct interaction with them. And then the last couple days, you're able to use it.
And most of these programs, you're going to want to bring a camera. I think that you will be fairly disappointed when you get home and you have tiny little pictures that you couldn't really zoom in on from your iPhone. So I would recommend not using your iPhone as a camera and bringing a camera for those times that you're going to need it. You're going to be in beautiful, stunning places. You're going to want to have a camera with you.
And that is sort of like the end of a lot of like the logistics. That is what we want students to do and participate in, and a general overview of sort of what we do as Rustic Pathways, how to sign up, some of the pre-logistics. Again, I know there's always a ton of questions that people have about trips. What we're going to move to right now is we're going to sort of move to sort of the question and answer section of the presentation. So we are going to go through some of the questions that you've submitted throughout, and we'll sort of just, they'll be a little bit hodgepodgey because they're not necessarily following a theme. Here are the contact details for Jessie and myself. As I mentioned, Jessie is going to India tomorrow, so she'll be a little bit slower at getting back to you via email. You can certainly email both of us, and we will get you in contact with either your personal travel advisor if you're already signed up, or myself or one of the other global program advisors to find a really good program match for you. So if this is all you wanted, definitely feel free to log off, but we'll spend the next probably 15-ish minutes going through some of these questions, and you can keep submitting questions. We're just going to run down the line and get as many as we can answered. And I'll also throw up a poll right here too, if I am able to, just so you can sort of see like what program or what areas of the world you're interested in. This is just good for us to know as we sort of cater some of our answers to these questions. We'll leave this poll open for probably a minute or two if you want to take it, and then we'll start another poll just if this was helpful or not. So we'll go through some of the questions right now, and I'll let Jessie take the first question.
Yes, we've got a question from Liz. She's interested, and I'm sure many of you are, about how do meals work on the programs. And to address a couple of the other questions as well, the program cost that you see on the website includes everything on the ground except for your airfare. So any international flights as well as any internal flights if students are flying from one destination to another in the country. As well as some programs have optional activities. Those are going to be listed very clearly on the website. And that's going to be something like bungee jumping or skydiving or some of the larger activities that maybe some students don't want to participate in or some parents are not comfortable allowing their students to participate in. Those will be deemed optional activities. You'll see that on the website. Any other activities that you see in the itinerary will be included in that program cost, as well as all meals and accommodations. So essentially, once you pay for that program and you pay for the flight, your students won't need necessarily another dime in country. Typically, students will want to bring some spending money to buy some souvenirs or extra snacks when they're doing specific trips, but they won't need to have anything in country. Everything else will be included. And then meals on the programs are really going to vary. So it really depends on if the students are doing traveling. We may visit local restaurants. In a lot of the smaller village programs, we're going to have our own chef and we're going to have local cuisine made by a local chef or cook in some of the villages. So really, this is a question that you can reach out to one of us as a GPA or to your PTA if you've already signed up, and find out what types of meals are served on the program. But oftentimes it's a mixture of the above.
And to go up that a little bit too, if you have any dietary concerns, absolutely let us know what that dietary concern is. Some programs it's very easy to deal with, and some it's a little bit more difficult. So the easiest thing to deal with is probably vegetarians. It's a really easy option in many countries, but it may be more difficult in a place like Mongolia. If you have a more specific allergy, like a nut, we will not take extreme nut allergies in Southeast Asia, so definitely important to let us know about that. Or we need to know if you're gluten-free or things of that nature. Just communicate out with us so we can really let you know what the food is like and if we can accommodate that diet on program.
Yeah, and just a quick note, actually, I meant to mention this earlier. We are recording this webcast. So if you know anybody that was not able to sign in tonight or make this webinar, we will have this on our website, and it will be at rusticpathways.com/recordings. So give us an email if you don't see it on there, but it should be up within the week.
Great. And then I want to add, someone has a question right here just about medical concerns as well. And I know we didn't highlight that in the presentation, so I'm going to talk about that. Before you sign up or before you start a program, you'll be required to fill out a medical form that just tells us about your background. So I broke my leg 2 years ago, or, I have a shoulder injury and I can't lift anything above 50 pounds. I wear glasses, or I take ADHD medication, or whatever it is. We are going to require that you fill out the medical form and submit it to our office. We have a participant screener that goes through and just looks at your medical history and background so that we have all of that information before you even start on a program, and then communicates that to your trip leaders. Then when you get there on the ground, we'll have trip leaders that do individual one-on-ones with every student, just so we know everything about their sort of medical background and sort of can be as prepared as possible from a safety perspective about that individual student. If they have medications that they need to take on a daily basis, the students should be self-medicated. The students should be able to either take the medication on their own. Our staff members can certainly remind them to take it, but they should be able to, take the pill or whatever on their own. If there's anything beyond that, again, I highlight just as much as possible. If there's some kind of medical concern, communicate with us as soon as possible, so that we can either let you know if it's possible in whatever country or area that you're looking at, or we can find a good program where that's more feasible for you. For example, I had a student once that had to have medication, but it always had to be refrigerated. So when I run programs in Tanzania, much more difficult to do in rural Tanzania, but very, very easy to find a program for them in Australia where that was accessible and available throughout the entire program. Jessie's going to pull up another question. I'm going to close this poll and just answer our final question of the evening, which is just whether it was helpful for you or not. So definitely take that poll if you have a minute. And then Jessie's going to have another question for y'all.
We do have a question about laundry, it looks like. Another very common question. And some of these questions are really going to vary per program. So this is going to be something that you'll want to reach out to us about a specific program. Most programs that run longer than 1 week, so if it's 2 or 3 week itinerary, you're going to have an opportunity somewhere in that schedule to do laundry. Not always. You'll definitely want to reach out to us as far as packing lists are concerned. But for the most part, if you were traveling with us for more than 2 weeks, I'd say there's definitely a chance for you to do laundry at some point during that. Usually, I will say.
I have a question right here. This is just a very specific question, but I'll answer it a little bit generally because I know we have a lot of questions about it. And it's, what's the average age of someone enrolled in my program? How many boys and girls are signed up? This is a great question to either call us or email us about, and we can give you those details. It's too difficult to do it over this webinar because someone will say summer camp leadership, June 16th. But if you send us the date and the program that you're looking at, we're able to give you sort of non-identifying information about that group. So we can tell you the male to female breakdown, the ages of the students, and what part of the world they're coming from. That's the information that we're able to provide, and we certainly are able to and happy to, after this presentation, if you just want to send us an email or give us a call tomorrow morning. I have a question about, should we, packing, should we bring any nice outfits, or is it all athletic? Really depends on the program a little bit. We have a couple like fancier programs where one or two nice outfits wouldn't be the worst idea. We have a lot more like rugged and community service-based projects. I would say, as a general rule of thumb, probably bring things that are a little bit on the older side of things, or you wouldn't be that sad if you left behind in country just because it got ruined with mud or dirt, just because we were so involved in sort of the community service projects. Again, this is going to vary from program to program, but for the most part, bring something that you're comfortable in. You don't have to run out and buy like a new pair of, of running sneakers that you've never worn before and not broken in, and like new, polo shirts or like the traveler shirts. You can certainly bring some of your old stuff. That's totally fine on program. And I would say probably err on the side of that kind of packing.
Yep, and any of our programs that run in Latin America, students are not required to speak Spanish, not a word. It's helpful if you do. We definitely encourage students to get a bit of basic Spanish in. We do have a 1-week Spanish immersion program called Ramp Up Your Spanish, specifically designed to connect with our service programs. If students want to get boned up on their conversational skills, it's a great program to do at the beginning of your service program. But it's not required. Students that do want to practice their Spanish, they will have the chance. All of our guides will speak fluent Spanish, and then depending on how much interaction on that particular program that you get with locals, you'll definitely get a chance to practice your Spanish, as well as those specific immersion language programs. So it's not required for any of our programs. Like I said, the programs will run in English, but if that's what they're going for, they'll definitely get Spanish language on that program. And as far as the itineraries that we offer for high school students, most of the time is planned. Students are going to have some downtime, but they're not going to have a lot of time. They will not have any time to leave the program or walk around on their own. They will always be supervised. They will always be with our staff. They will have some downtime depending on the itinerary to read a book or play a game, play some soccer in the field. But for the most part, we have fairly activity-full itineraries. So definitely, if you're concerned about having too little or too much free time, that's another question to kind of reach out with specific program options.
I have a question. This is a common question that we didn't cover at all, just about accommodation. This is going to vary quite significantly per program. So this would be something, if you're looking at a trip, definitely get in contact with us so we can tell you what the accommodation is like for that specific trip. So again, for example, I worked in Tanzania last summer. We stay in a rural village with no access to electricity, squat toilets, no showers, and we're sleeping on mats in a classroom, essentially, of the village. There's some programs where you're staying at, a guest house, some programs where you're staying with homestay families, some programs where you stay at beautiful base houses that will have like a swimming pool and a soccer field out back. It really, really does depend on the program. And so we can't go into really specifics about each trip on this presentation. But again, me and Jessie's email addresses are up on the screen right now. You can always email us or call into our office, and we'll be able to tell you what the accommodation is like for the specific program that you are looking at. I also have another question just about storing participant documents. This is a pretty quick, easy one. We'll collect all student passports when they land on the ground, and they'll be kept by Rustic Pathways staff members in safe, secure locations while they're in country. So you won't have to worry about the student having it with them while they're on the ground in country. That'll all be taken over by Rustic Pathways staff members throughout the trip. And I'm trying to see, I think that is pretty much all of the questions that we've had. I may have missed a couple. Sort of a lot of questions are coming in. If we've missed a question,
Can anyone hear us now?
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I think our audio went down for a moment. I'm not really sure what was up with that, but I was just sort of saying it looks like that's pretty much the end of a lot of the questions that we've had come through the chat feature, and I know we usually try and wrap this up about an hour. I know some people were, wanted some questions about help me find a program or what's the right one for me. That is something that absolutely we're more than happy to help you out with. On a one-on-one basis. And again, questions like accommodation, specific flight questions, things like that. We would love to work with you sort of one-on-one as it allows based on what country or program you're specifically looking into. So take down Jessie and my email addresses. Feel free to give our office a call in the morning. And then I'll send a follow-up email to everyone who attended. If you have any other questions beyond that, absolutely 100% feel free to get in touch with us with any questions that you have, especially because, again, that we have a big sort of deadline this Sunday, April 12th. So we're trying to get everyone all of their questions sort of answered before that time, just to make it easier for all the families and us here at Rustic Pathways.
Yeah, thanks. I think we'll give it another 5 minutes if anybody has a last minute question, but thank you so much for attending, everyone. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Even though I'm traveling, if you have questions specifically that you'd like to send my way, I would love to hear from you. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, giving us an hour of your time, and we look forward to seeing you guys this summer.